I'm going to call this video the mistakes you can make while pouring epoxy and cutting boards. Anyway, here it is. So the mistakes I've made. Okay, you notice that the cutting board is foggy. Okay, I've polished this down to 3000 grit. It's just foggy. And the reason it's foggy is this. If you can look at the edge, you can distinctly see the pores. The first 1/4 inch is one pore. The second quarter, or actually a second 1/2 inch is another pore, and then the third 1/2 inch is a third pore. Well, the first 1/4 inch was very clear on this side. Notice it's beautiful. Absolutely wonderful. And the second 1/4 inch, I poured a 1/2 inch. Or second pour, I poured a 1/2 inch. And you notice there's all kinds of bubbles in the very top half of that. If I'd done a 1/4 inch, I probably could have gotten away with it, and it probably would have been very clear. So pouring a quarter, and a quarter. So the bottom line is I ended up pouring too fast. And honestly, my shop is, let's say, less than advantageous. It doesn't have heat. It was 40 degrees the morning that the pours occurred, all three of them. Started out at 40 degrees and it rose from there. Got to about 60 to 70 in the afternoon. But if I'd waited until the afternoon to pour it also, that would have made it a lot easier for the bubbles to come out. So, and a third thing I did was when I laid the piece down, fourth thing I did, when I laid the piece down, I just laid a dry piece onto the mold. You know, I've got that plastic mold right there, and I laid the dry piece onto the mold. And then what I did was when I did the first pour, there was a line right here. I don't know if you can see it, but it's very visible. You probably can't see it in the video, but there's a line. It was a piece of the cutting board right here that did not get any epoxy on it. It crept down on the edges all the way around, but in the center here, there was no epoxy. So you ended up with a hole in the center. So what I ended up doing was coming back and doing a fourth pour. So I had three level pours, and then a fourth pour here with just a little tiny bit, about a cup of epoxy, and then let it rain down. And that actually worked. So you see, it's close to being invisible. You can actually see lines somewhere, but most of it is invisible because, when you pour epoxy on epoxy, it seems to, to meld and not show the lines. But in the future, what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually pour a little bit of epoxy on the floor of the mold, then put the cutting board in, then do my pour. And by doing that, I expect that I'll have a good pour on the very bottom of it. And I may have to come back and pour a little bit more, but I don't think so. I think once I do that way and put cutting board on there, that it will actually have a pretty good way of. My only concern is that there will be no way of getting the bubbles out. So what I'm going to do, I don't have a vacuum canister. So when I mix up my epoxy, there are bubbles in it, and I have to get them out. So what I think I'm going to have to do is pour that little tiny layer, maybe 1/8 of an inch, and then hit it with my heat. Hit it with my heat, and that will take the bubbles out. Then I'm going to lay the cutting board onto the bubble-free epoxy and pour the remaining 1/4 inch. So I think that will work, but we'll still yet to see. I mean, obviously, this isn't good. I mean, it's a great idea. I'm doing it for my son-in-law, unfortunately, and so he's a ex-Marine, or actually, I guess he's not an ex-Marine. All Marines are always Marines. So it's going to be a really nice cutting board. But I think 2 or 3 things also. Thickness is crazy. I mean, I think I'm gonna cut the wood in half. I had a good 1/2 inch of wood in there, and I think maybe 1/4 inch because the cutting board now is, it's substantial, and I don't think you need to have that kind of cutting board. I mean, you want it. You might have it if you want to have it on the on the counter off permanently. But if you're cutting with it and putting it up, it needs to be half this size. So anyway, those are the mistakes I made. So pouring cold, pouring too thick of pours, which I couldn't get. When I poured this second pour, this one right here, I couldn't get the bubbles out of it. I worked and worked and worked and worked and worked, and the bubbles just would not come out of it because it was cold. So then I did the third pour on top of that, thinking I might be able to get away with it, and the same exact thing happened because it was too cold. And that's when I figured out, I mean, I'm a slow learner, I guess, you know, that's when I figured out that the thick pours you can't do. So if I was going to do something this thick again, I would do 5 pours instead of 3. I would do little 1/4-inch pours, maybe even less, maybe 1/8-inch pours, and then hit the bubbles, and then go to the next one. And 8 hours later, when the epoxy is still tacky, you can pour another layer. So if you do that every 8 hours, you could build it up, have a glass-looking cutting board. Anyway, those are the mistakes I made. I hope this helps you, you know, because honestly, this stuff's expensive, and I made serious mistakes in all of this. And I'm going to miss Christmas. I actually going to have to tell my family that, well, your Christmas gift isn't even going to be here because I'm going to have you a New Year's gift instead of a Christmas gift for them. Because I was making this specifically for Christmas. So anyway, thank you much. Hopefully you I appreciate it. Thank you much. Bye.